Hi, everyone. My name is Lena Chen, and welcome to No Justice, No Booty, Sex Work, Art, and Activism. Today's panelists are going to talk about their experiences in sex work, art, and organizing, and how these efforts have become all the more important in a COVID age where we are increasingly seeing the intersections between the sex workers' rights movement and movements for racial justice, prison abolition, and labor rights. Using these organizations as examples, we will discuss coalition building and the potential for art to transform the way we see the road to social justice. I will introduce myself and my background, and then I will give our lovely panelists an opportunity to share with you some of their experiences. My name is Lena, and I'm a Chinese American writer, sex worker, and artist whose practice spans performance and socially engaged art. I was born and raised in California and have spent time in Berlin. I hold a BA in sociology from Harvard, and I'm currently doing my MFA at the Carnegie Mellon School of Art. I've performed and exhibited internationally at venues like Transmediale, D Digitale, Baltimore Museum of Art, and the B3 Biennial of the Moving Image, where I was named Best Emerging Talent. My art practice is deeply influenced by my experiences as a survivor of revenge porn and cyberstalking, as well as by my work as a fetish provider, stripper, and cam performer. I'm also the co-founder of Heal Her, which uses expressive arts and storytelling techniques to support survivors of sexual violence. I've been featured in international media outlets, and I've spoken at institutions like Oxford, Yale, Stanford, and South by Southwest. Currently, I'm based in Pittsburgh and would like to acknowledge that this is the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Lenni Lenape, Shawnee, and Haudenosaunee, the Six Nations. This is my third South by Southwest as a speaker, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. And now I'd like to give the panelists a chance to introduce themselves to all of you.
Hi, my name is MJ Tom. I am an interdisciplinary artist and a cultural activist based in New York City, which is before colonialization was Lenape land. I'm particularly interested in investigating alternative modes of kinship made available via sex work, queer landscapes, S&M, and digital spaces. I hold a BA in International Relations and Art History from the University of Texas and a Master's in Arts Politics from New York University. I frequently go by my Chaos for Pay alter ego, Empress Wu, who is a dominatrix based in New York. And I additionally organize events and exhibitions with collectives Red Canary Song, Kink Out Events, and Veil Machine. In partnership with Kink Out and Veil Machine, I am currently a Phase 2 fellow in IBEAM's Rapid Response for Digital Future residency, where I am investigating the possibility of an archive built with the sex worker ethos.
My name is Kat Hollis. I am currently in Portland, Oregon in the United States, and the Portland metro area rests on the traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Wasco, Kolowitz, Klamath, Clackamas, different bands of the Chinook, Tulalip, Kalapia, and Molalla tribes, as well as other tribes that made their home along the Columbia River pre-colonialization. And I'm an accomplished artist, playwright, I'm a sex worker, I'm a labor rights organizer, and I am the founder of Haymarket Pole Collective, which is an advocacy group for Black, Indigenous, and trans liberation. I've been everything from a sailboat deckhand to a middle school teacher, an art gallery curator, and a published playwright. And I'm also a big booty hoe and a sex worker rights advocate. So I was raised in the Midwest and I've lived on Lake Superior, but I have been stripping for almost a decade now after my divorce. And I founded Haymarket Pole Collective, which is a autonomous sex worker led organization led by Black, trans, and Indigenous sex workers. And I love the adult industry and I'm excited to be here.
Hi everyone, my name's Luna and I'm currently in London in the UK. I'm a curator and an artist and an in-person sex worker, and I recently graduated from my MFA degree. I currently co-organise Cybertease, which is a virtual strip club organised by unionized workers. So our politics are rooted in union organisation, and we're committed to destigmatizing sexual labour. Cybertease functions as a workers' co-op, with all proceeds being split equally amongst organisers, hosts, performers, and our DJs Queer House Party. We were founded in March 2020 as a direct response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Cybertease has since produced 17 online events and provided a platform and income to over 50 international sex workers. We welcome audiences and performers of all genders, sexualities, ethnicities, abilities, ages 18 plus, and socioeconomic backgrounds. We prioritise recruiting workers who are unfairly discriminated against and face access barriers within the sex industry. Cybertease are socialists, we're sex positive, and we're self-taught. And we hope by seizing the means of production, we propose a model for sex work that puts the power and profit back in the hands of the workers.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Like I was saying earlier, it's amazing to have us assembled in one virtual room. So maybe there are some blessings to the pandemic, because otherwise, who knows if this panel could have formed. But I find all of your work so inspiring for various reasons, and have learned a lot from attending your events or studying your techniques and thinking about how that can be applied in my own art practice. And during a time when there's a lot of talk about essential labor, I think a lot about artists and sex workers as essential laborers, because when there's uncertainty and political unrest, it's like, who can you go to make meaning out of all the chaos? Who can you go to for the care that is needed, right? So I guess my first question to everyone is, can we talk a little bit about the role that art or performance can play in enacting social change?
I'm happy to start this one off. So when we built Eviction, which was this like very, I guess difficult to describe, it was essentially like a gallery in which like different sex workers came in and it was self-destructing after like a period of 12 hours. I think that the intention behind building an event like that, and I'm assuming like also the intention in like building, building works of art and like other pieces of performance and like, other creative works, is that like in the larger, broader scope for social change, I think that the thing that is like the heaviest motivator is like getting people to understand that there's like an embodied experience, and like understanding that there's like a physical, like that all of these different pieces of like text and legislation have like a physical impact on the body. And so in my experience, art and performance like have this really, really crucial role as like an emotional catalyst in getting people to understand something, even if it's something that they cannot necessarily like articulate, or something that cannot be like spread through like an infographic, or something that cannot necessarily be like, it can be understood but not like taken in. And that's where art and performance come in, is like adding the physical embodied experience to like facilitate that social change.
Yeah, that definitely resonates with me. And I've often said that, you know, our culture is only as much as the stories that we tell and are currently telling and are told about us, right? And so as we experience mass media and mass culture, it is art, you know what I mean? This chair was designed by somebody. Most of the things that we experience every day are little pieces of art, little nuggets of art from different people. And so in order to change a culture, first you must change its art. You must change what we see every day. You must change how we see it every day, because it's how we communicate out into the future. It's how our voices are carried forward. And I've heard a lot of talk from especially Black activists talking about hearing the song of our ancestors and singing it forward. And we are just like one verse in this beautiful chorus that's happened over the years. And we sing more clearly when we listen to the previous songs that have been sung, and we have more clarity in our voices when we think about who is going to be listening to our songs as well. That we need to use art as a communicative medium for how we move change through our culture. And so I truly believe that through making art we can institute change. But I mean, personally, Haymarket Pole started from a flame war in a comment section online, and it came through memes. And I've said many times that memes are a form of modern folk art, that they are much like fiber arts or many other traditionally feminine art forms. They're not seen as really like a high class art, but it really truly carries a lot of meaning for these marginalized cultures who wouldn't otherwise have their histories written down. And because you can take a meme that, everyone can understand, I don't even know, Grumpy Cat or something like that. And so if you take Grumpy Cat and you put on top of it this social ideal that would have otherwise been totally not understandable by another group that doesn't have those experiences, hasn't been marginalized, has never been grumpy at a pimp, has never been grumpy at the cops, has never been grumpy at those things, they see this piece of art and they can really tangibly understand what is trying to be communicated in that person's experience. And so the internet really has created this like beautiful language of art for us to be able to talk about our trauma and have some humor and have some beauty in the ways that we change how we see ourselves and how other people see us.
Yeah, I thought this was a really interesting question, and it got me thinking like on grand schemes about existential things like what is the role of art in general. And yeah, I think I have two answers. Like one's very simple in terms of Cybertease. Art in terms of social change has been an opportunity to work through processes with others, to collect our thoughts and produce something collectively, has been a really beautiful experience. It's also been a vital means of fundraising by performing our art and selling tickets and receiving tips. We've paid people. So yeah, on a practical level. But really, like when I thought of what is the role that art or performance can play in social change, it kind of made me want to like flip the perspective and ask like, what role does social change play on art? And like, if we consider the notion of like the visual or the performing arts or the art world, we're kind of like, that can deny class and race and gender relations by implying that art is somehow like separate from the issues of the non-art world, of like making art this kind of like wholly separate sphere, like which would be a group of professionals defined by like a common interest, which would be art, rather than it being like a massive group of widely conflicting interests, which we all know art to truly be. So yeah, art is not like independent of society. It is society, and like society, it's marked by significant divisions. So yeah, I think it's a complicated question.
Yeah, I definitely think that what you just said about like art is society and it's not separate is something that is really, really important in the when I think about performance, right? Part of what being a good educator to me means is not just info dumping on people. You can't just like, here's the things you need to know, and I'm the arbiter of truth, and here's reality. I'm going to give it to you. We do in many ways, people talk about performative activism, but in a more positive light, we have to emulate the behaviors that we want to see modeled from other people. And so using these spaces as a space to say, well, not only am I a sex worker, not only am I taking my clothes off, not only am I dancing, I can do that, and right? Like stand-up comedy, yes, and so when I'm in that space and bringing art into a space of social activism, how do I perform the sort of actions that should be taken? How do I show other people that it's possible to not be afraid, that it's possible to have somebody to go to when you're crying at 2 a.m. in the dressing room and the manager's being a dick? How do we carry forward these performances that we have into performing the culture we want to see carried forward, you know? So
Um, I am really, yeah, all of that is like really resonating with me, and everything that y'all are saying is like, it's making me think about like, in addition to the art, like facilitating social change or social change facilitating art, thinking about like how this is all like passed on as information in the long term, and thinking about like, oh, okay, how is it that institutions have constructed certain I guess like standards of like legibility, right? And how things like memes, things like performance, things like art, especially like outsider art of any type, or like craft or folk art, or those things like exist outside of that like understood standard of legibility. And but those are actually really, really crucial modes of archiving that are sometimes like so much more effective than like the way, the way in which like current archives are like, okay, we're just gonna like collect every single piece of paper that the person ever owned, and hopefully that'll tell us something about the time. When in reality, like things like storytelling, things like constructing like a physical experience, or that taking in like different ways of knowing, or like memes, right, are actually so much clearer indicators of what is occurring in a culture at a specific place and time. And it's like you said, Luna, too, right? That like performance and art and sex work are all just like different titles for the same thing, right? It's not I wouldn't even consider them being like in addition to each other. They are all just like the same, like, and they're all just like as real and as authentic as each other.
Yeah, I'm really interested in how each of you are involved with movements and communities that have directly used art as part of your activism, as part of educating the public, as a form of entertainment that is also supporting workers who've really suffered and been forgotten during this pandemic. I'd love to hear about how some of these efforts align and build coalition with other social justice movements. And I'm thinking about racial justice, which obviously has gotten a huge amount of attention this year because of the protests in the US. I'm thinking about migrant rights. I'm thinking about prison abolition, and also maybe labor movements in general, in which I think many sex workers are not very well represented or incorporated. So if you have any input on that, I think it would be really wonderful to hear how sex workers are playing a role in maybe revolutionizing techniques for organizing.
I not to be Debbie Downer, but also to be Debbie Downer. I recently completed a project with the Old Pro project, which is collecting different stories from sex workers across the country and producing pieces of art to represent those sex workers in our communities. And a lot of the projects were people. It had to be somebody who had passed, and a lot of them were ancestral people who were a generation back, a couple of generations back, who have don't get me wrong, done a lot of good work. And my sex worker that I chose to represent was a friend of mine, Ashley, who killed herself after experiencing extreme stigma um, due to just being a sex worker, mental health issues, things like that, and just being, I mean, basically just bullied out of the city, um, and not being able to get booked because she was Black and things like that. And one of the things that we've really been focusing in on at Haymarket is providing mental health resources and just kind of trying to stem the flow of trauma through our communities. And I think that the intersectionality between racial justice and prison abolition and labor rights often comes from, how much are we willing to carry to benefit a system that doesn't support us? How are we willing to make it their problem instead of our own? Because there's this whole idea of being the arbiter of truth, the arbiter of right, the arbiter of justice, of that we're going to put you away in a prison because we decided what you're doing is wrong. Like you're going to go over there. But I think that restorative justice means more than just abolishing prisons. It means coming up with a new system for how we reintegrate people into our communities, both who have been harmed and who do harm, because it's not just people who are innocent, right? There are people who have done really horrible things that have really hurt other people. And how do we take those people and ask ourselves, putting that person away is not going to save us from the next one, right? How do we interrupt the system of harm so that it doesn't continue to happen? And when it does, we have a better way of dealing with it so that people don't just get left behind. Opening the borders doesn't make the work practices fair, right? Giving people citizenship doesn't necessary. I mean, and I have citizenship here in the United States. I'm very blessed to have that. Need to check my privilege on that. But there's a point at which, like, I was just reading something that MLK had written, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but he was saying the first part of the movement was getting the Civil Rights Act passed. Cool. Did it. Great. The second part was money. And what is justice if I can't feed myself? Right? And what is justice if I can't live happily? And so I think we've really focused in on trying to create support systems so that the people who are the most marginalized can not only thrive, but define their own outcomes outside of survival. Because just saying, hey, don't, step on this person's toes doesn't make their toes not broken. And so asking them then, what is the path that you want to walk when their feet are still broken is not helpful. And so really focusing in on how to allow people to define their own path first comes from a sense of justice in defining what it means to try to heal and try to, get steel-toed boots on every heart. So yeah, I think that we've really been focusing in on mental health because I mean, I own 2 gas masks now. They're still tear gassing us downtown, still to this day with Biden. The feds are still here throwing pepper balls outside of a school. Like you can find the rubber bullets that are like this big, and I mean, it's really intensely dangerous to deal with these sorts of things. And the thing that I've chosen to do is to focus in on how to heal the people who are just, fighting this fight every day. How do we become, medics and caretakers for the people who have experienced this trauma? Because it's been a year for sure. I don't even know that I really answered the question, but that's my rant and rave on intersectionality.
Yeah, I think like in addition to, I think Kat made like a fucking amazing point regarding like, it's not only how do you make sure that this person is able to survive, but then also how do you make sure that that person is able to like choose their own outcome, no matter like what it is that they decide to do. Like, how do you basically like grant them the freedom and autonomy, or I guess like restore their right to pursue that freedom and autonomy for themselves. And yeah, I'm thinking about like basically how gathering in public spaces, I feel like, has been like a really, really big thing this year. And I think that gathering in public spaces has been like it is so it is such a like politicized act, but it is made so much more so by the conditions of the pandemic. And I feel like everybody here, I'm assuming that we have all done in-person sex work, but I feel like everybody here kind of can understand how like suddenly there's this like really huge health monster that like intersects with all these different pieces of stigma that basically make it illegal for people to gather, whether that's like in public or in private. But yeah, in New York, there's just been like a recent appeal of the walking while trans ban, where that has had like a really, really huge impact on like the way that like trans sex workers or trans people, which happens to be like there's like a lot of intersection between like trans and queer communities and sex workers in New York, I mean everywhere. And I feel like basically like there's just like we are able to find so much like mutual joy, whether that's communities of sex workers, communities of like undocumented people, laborers, previously incarcerated people, queer and trans people. I just feel like we should be allowed to experience joy in whatever way that happens for us. And I feel like it is going back to your previous question of like what performance has to do with that. I feel like that so often happens when like communities are able to like be together. And yeah, and so I've just like witnessed so many different instances in like different communities like coming together and realizing, oh, I actually have a stake in this like piece of legislation, or I actually have something at stake when like this person is policing you. And that feeling of like interdependence and like interconnectedness is like gives me the sweats. It's like magic, you know what I mean? So I know that this must be happening. Like it's I'm seeing it like on the ground in New York, and I know that it's like happening all over the world too.
Yeah, I think the point that MJ raised about yeah, a lot of sex workers are queer and a lot of queer people are sex workers. This is an intersection that I think has been really important to the growth of Cybertease, because from the very start of us, we realized like, oh shit, we've got to get a DJ to do this event. So we reached out to a collective called Queer House Party, and we didn't know them. They were just also running Zoom parties, DIY Zoom parties. We reached out to them and they said like, sick, yeah, we'll do a non-financial skill exchange with you to start with. So they DJ'd every one of our events, and then we would perform at their events. And this way, yeah, we both got what we needed for each of the events. And this continued for about, I think about 5 events until we realized that this was actually sustainable and we were going to be doing like loads more of them. Then we added them to our co-op, and now, yeah, they're a part of our co-op and take the same cut as everyone else from our funds. That crossover between the Queer House Party events and our events as well is also like created this amazing crossover of audiences. So a lot of the Queer House Party bunch who like maybe, yeah, wouldn't feel welcome in a traditional like cis het like strip club environment, you know, when you're in the comfort of your own home with, and our customers aren't on cam, so they can't see each other, so you're free to enjoy it however you wish, and there's no cross judgment from like the other customers in the room. So it's actually like we have a really like amazing mix of audiences, like people from all backgrounds, and nobody knows who else is in the room, so everyone's free to watch, which I think is really good. Yeah, we've also like, I think it's really important in our work to like acknowledge and be opposed to like the hierarchy within sex work. It's a big thing in the UK anyway. A lot of us, well, all of us were in-person sex workers doing full service, escorting, stripping, both, whatever. Before this, none of us had done any online work. So this was a whole kind of like new challenge for us to navigate. And yeah, we really wanted to make a platform where in-service workers everything would be set up for them, so you don't have to work out how to do the tech, you don't have to find an audience, like we'll find it all for you, and you just need a computer and a room, and then you can work. Yeah, we're also like really passionate about trade union activism, And yeah, we function as a workers co-op, and we're founded on the belief that like no workers should be left behind. So it doesn't matter if I get tip loads one night, everything's shared, because the next night I might not get any tips, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to take the same home every night and nobody misses out. It takes away that like anxiety roller coaster of sex work of like good night, bad night, good night, bad night. Like every night, everyone wins. Yeah, so the union also informs like the way we function as a collective, and you know, in the way that we organize between us, like we have diplomatic votes, but we also practice a sort of we vote on things, but if somebody very strongly objects to that idea, they may override everybody else's votes, because we want to like practice some sort of consent, and we don't want people to feel forced into something just because of the majority override. So yeah, we had to take a lot of time talking through decisions with each other. Yeah, and during our events, we really try to like infuse socialist politics into our performance and our hosting. So for example, like I did a dance once to like Solidarity Forever by Pete Seeger, and like did a striptease to it, where I started off like dressed as a tradie and then like stripped down to a sex worker. And like we, in our host speeches, like we try and inform our audience about politics and try and get them to engage with labor rights activism and encourage them to join their own unions in like whatever profession they're in. Oh, I should mention about the union as well. Yeah, we're members of a union called United Voices of the World, which is a grassroots trade union for low-paid migrant and precarious workers in the UK. And they have a specific sex worker branch, which we're all a part of. And yeah, I think I mentioned in my intro, but that's how we all met through our union activities. And then we were in our union WhatsApp group, and we were like, we can't be doing with this. Like, no one's got any work. What should we do? And yeah, we came up with this idea and just got on with it.
I think I was just thinking about one of the things that we've said here many times, like previous to the pandemic, there was a lot of sort of whispers about the industry is sort of fading, you know what I mean? Like the in-person sort of thing, or I don't know what they thought was going on. It wasn't, but there was a lot of talk about that. And one of the things I kept saying was, no, you're just still catering to the Wolf of Wall Street, and he doesn't exist anymore. Like, why don't you cater? Like, if you're only hiring the same, and no shade, all shade, the same white, big boobed, tattooed, like stripper every single time, like maybe the reason that your audience isn't changing and updating and refreshing is because you're still catering to somebody in 1985, right? And so the idea of like having a space where queer folks can come, and I, no pun intended, but I will take it on that one, a space where queer folks can come, you know, creating those spaces where it's super accessible. That is something I've said so many times, is that I don't want to, and this is very colorist of me, but I think it's important to say anyway. I don't want to be the brownest butt in a room. Like if I'm going into a club and I'm the darkest person there, that's a bad sign. Like I'm about to have a bad time. And so going into a space where I know that there's somebody queerer than me, there's somebody darker than me, there's somebody who's had, you know, a different experience than me, is so important in knowing that I am going to have sort of an experience that doesn't suck. And so having these spaces online has been so cool, so cool. And I don't think it would have happened without the pandemic, like us being here in this room together. I think so many things in the pandemic have brought us together because we've had to just figure it out and be together.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like there's been so much more mainstream coverage of the sex industry because folks have been turning to OnlyFans and other online platforms wanting to get into sex work, sometimes with, you know, very large misconceptions about what that work entails. You know, but nonetheless, there is this curiosity, right? And we are trapped at home, and not everyone, you know, lives with a partner or has access to intimacy at this moment. And I think the thing that really has touched me is that I see sex workers rallying to support each other because it's a stigmatized industry. You know, other people don't always understand, okay, on top of all the normal issues that you might encounter trying to stay employed and fed and healthy during a pandemic, if you're a sex worker, you're doubly screwed. And often you're treated by the state as a vector for disease. You're not given the support that you need. So the support now is coming from community members, and that type of care that, so many of you have already mentioned. Kat mentioning mental health, and MJ mentioning joy, and Luna mentioning like the very, practical bridge building method of, teaming up with other event producers, who are suffering. I think all of these are also acts of care, and that care is sometimes not recognized as part of the labor that we do. But it's what I've experienced, in a dressing room when I don't have a tampon, or like my eyelash fell off, or, when someone refers a client to me, and all these little acts of care that I think are all the more touching because, we realize we face huge barriers to being taken seriously as workers sometimes. So we have to support each other because no one else will. So I guess that leads into like another question of mine, which is how your community has supported each other financially or otherwise during this pandemic. I know we've touched upon this a bit already, but for me, my local chapter of Sex Workers Outreach Project that I'm involved in, we've been making a lot more connections with health professionals, with caseworkers, working in the local jail, and realizing that if we want to do mutual aid effectively and really reach people who need those resources, we have to build connections to other folks who are not just working with sex workers. Maybe they're working with people who are experiencing homelessness. Maybe they're working with people who are using drugs. But it's about creating a real community that is reliant on personal trust and relationships. And it's still possible to do that right now, even though we're living in slightly unusual times. Yeah, so I'd love to hear what's happening in each of your communities.
Yeah, I feel like I think that one of the most amazing things ever is like watching different parts of the community like come out of the woodwork and like support each other in so many different ways. I mean, in addition to like all the different like the direct financial mutual aid, Red Canary Song, for example, has been doing like financial and grocery drop-offs for migrant massage parlor laborers out in Flushing, Queens. In addition, like there are always like GoFundMes that are going around and like people who are promoting other people's GoFundMes. But in addition to that, I think like the ways in which people have like helped other people work has been astounding to me. Whether that's like I have like a couple of friends who have like physical spaces and that they've just like opened their spaces and some of those spaces are like within their apartments, right? And they've just like opened those spaces to other workers so that those workers can like work during the pandemic when space in general in New York, like real estate in New York is fucking politicized. Being indoors with other people is like really fucking politicized, but this is like an essential thing that needs to occur. Like people need to make money to be able to survive. And sex workers, like, it is like incredibly up in the air whether or not sex workers are like are they can be supported via like unemployment money, you know what I mean? So offering space or offering like job opportunities has been like a really incredible thing to witness. I feel like I've seen so many different like people hosting events just so that they can like generate income for other people and like give other people spots so that they can like work at that event. As well as like survival tips. Like there has been like a mass gathering of community to come together to make sure that like everybody is like taken care of during the pandemic, or anybody that they can reach is like taken care of during the pandemic. Via like skill sharing, info dumping, like just offering. I think that recently there was like this thing that somebody in community had organized with Pornhub that was like a series of panels put together so that people could just like get as much information that they needed about like sex work and survival. So that included information like how to vet people, how to, make sure that you are taking care of your health, how to maximize your profit on OnlyFans, and just like spanning the whole range of that information spectrum. I feel like the last thing has been like on small levels, like very beautiful instances of interpersonal care. So I know that I have like a circle, like I have like sex work family, right? And I am currently not partnered, or not partnered in like the traditional sense. So something that has actually been like really amazing is that like the people that I find myself potted with are my sex work family, and I feel like I can trust them to take care of me in so many different, like I trust them to have my back, and like during the pandemic I trust them to like sexually take care of me, you know what I mean? And like that's just like I feel like I feel extremely lucky to have experienced that, and then also to have people who I'm like, I know that this isn't going to last forever, I know that this thing isn't going to last forever, we're not going to always need each other in this capacity, but just the fact that I have friends that I can like have that kind of relationship with, where we know like, oh, this is like an act of like, we're all just trying to like maintain our sanity in one of the wackiest years that has ever come to pass. So yeah, like tiny acts of care like that, or like, you know, offering to make food for the people that you love, or I don't know, like offering to stop by, or like, you know, I've seen so many different instances of like structured routines where I'll have like scheduled like co-working time, or scheduled like phone calls with other people, just like check in and make sure that not every, you know, as like a supplement to our mental health routine. And seeing that happen on such a wide scale, and knowing that that's happening for so many different people is like really like it's like really touching and moving.
You got me a little verklempt. That is, the things that you said resonate with me so deeply. Um, I have a lot of like relationship trauma in my past, and I have a lot of friendship trauma in my past, and I don't trust people, period. Like, I'm not a trusting person at all. And I have said many times that like, that this year is the first time I knew what community was supposed to look like. It's the first time that I've ever fallen, and not like a trust fall, not like let me see if this person will have my back, but like I had nothing, and I have not gone hungry. I have not been wanton. I have not, I mean, I have been lonely, but there has been so much support. Like, I live in a house still. I don't even know. There has been so much mutual aid within our community that has been just it has floored me over and over again. I can't believe the amazing amount of support that has gone back and forth between people. Me and one of my friends, I swear, we just keep sending $50 back and forth. It happens all the time, and that will just always like stay in this little circle. But um, but thank you for sharing that so much, because it struck a chord with me. But we have very specifically the things that Haymarket has done to help each other out. We got nonprofit status. And so that has been really essential to applying for grants that we can then redistribute to our community, because as individuals, we cannot do that. So the YWCA of the Greater Portland area, God bless Susan Stoltenberg. She's an old white lady who is the wokest person I've ever met. I love her deeply. She had no questions when I came to her for help. She was like, Black sex workers? Cool. We'll be your bank. No problem. They're great. And we got a $590,000 grant from the Oregon Health Authority to distribute supplies to remediate the harm from COVID. So, and it had to be done in 3 months. So we had to spend $500,000, and I was like, as a sex worker, I know how to do this. So we got emergency packs for basically that part of our pitch was, if you think this is bad, what happens if there's an earthquake on top of all of this? So we got emergency kits into people's hands with like crank radios, space blankets, the like MRE food things that last a million years. but we also got mail-in COVID testing to people because we were just saying that there's no way somebody who wakes up at noon isn't going to make it to the county site in time to get tested. I don't know if you know this, UK person, but we don't have healthcare here. It's not like a thing that we just have. And it's horrible. And so we got mail-in COVID tests to people. We got mail-in STI testing to people so that they didn't have to go to like Planned Parenthood. So we had people tested for, and it was so that they could do it in their own home, by themselves. They didn't have to have a healthcare provider there. So we got families grocery cards. We got families gas cards for transportation or bus vouchers. And so each family got, I mean, it was like $4,000 worth of stuff, that we coordinated to get to those families. We have also done, like currently we're doing free support groups for Black mothers. And so if you're a Black sex working parent, we say birthing parent, maternal parent, but we're not, I don't know, we're not trying to gatekeep on gender. So people who have children who are Black and who are sex workers can come together and have a space where they can talk openly about the issues that they face, because I don't have kids, I don't know. And so having those spaces for free for people to be able to get help and have a community to help build those connections. Because like you said, those connections where somebody shows up and calls you and is like, hey, how are you doing? Those sorts of things are so important. And especially for parents right now, they're busy, they're working, they're being a teacher, they're being a cook, they're doing all sorts of stuff. And so really supporting people to be able to connect to each other has been really, really, really important. And helping people sign up for unemployment and the pandemic unemployment assistance has been really important. But yeah, that's all I got. I don't know, a lot of stuff, but mutual aid is so important.
Yeah, I think at the beginning of the lockdown, when we all pulled together, we tried to think like, what way can we help best, and like what situations are we most immediately facing? And it was just like loss of workspaces, like all of the strip clubs closed like back in March 2020. They haven't been open since, and like you can't book a hotel to do an in-call, so people just can't work. And we all had experience on like putting on performance art events or comedy events. We were like, so we can do events, like that's what we're skilled in, so that's what we'll do, and we'll make a platform for people to be able to work, because that's what's being taken away, and that's what we want to do, is just work. So yeah, that's I think the predominant reason why we made Cybertease, was to create a platform for sustainable income for sex workers during the pandemic. And yeah, so like on top of that, well, we've had each event, we have 4 to 5 guest performers. So over a year now, we've had 50 international performers from all over the world get paid. We've also, like, there's an organization in the UK called Swarm, which stands for the Sex Workers Advocacy and Resistance Movement. They had a hardship fund open for sex workers in the UK. It's closed currently, but they're opening it in installments. Every time they get enough funds to open it, they reopen it. So we regularly share the Swarm link and encourage our event attendees to also donate there. And some of us have even received the Swarm hardship fund as a way to get us through the pandemic. We also, like, because of having a rotating set of guest performers, we're quite keen to stay in touch with everybody that we've met through this experience and try and create an ongoing community from that. So we have this thing we call the legacy chat. So everybody who's ever performed at Cybertease is invited to join this like giant Signal group. And there we share resources, keep in touch with each other. We like encourage each other and advise each other on challenges we face within and outside of sex work. And it's just like a big forum that anybody who's performed at Cybertease joins, and we all stay in touch.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm really happy that we were able to make this time to spend together. And I just have one final question, um, which is how you envision your ideal world for sex workers to be. And I want you to answer that in one question, one sentence. In one sentence, say, what does your ideal world for sex workers look like? And secondly, how can people support your work or community or movement?
If I had one word to describe the world that I would want sex workers to exist in, I think I would say evolutionary. Revolution implies a return to the beginning, and I would really like us to move forward in a way that is not even just survival of the fittest, but let's take the pieces of the things that have worked and let's proliferate those things. And you can support Haymarket Pole by visiting haymarketpole.com. You can support me. I'm at Kat Hollis on Instagram. And I think the thing that people could do is to send $5 to that Black friend that you always say, well, I have Black friends. Go on your Venmo and send them $5 right now. Go do it.
One sentence for future visions. Okay, I guess, yeah. Despite being sex workers, we're strictly anti-capitalist. So I would say an end to capitalism, no more work, no more wage labor. Sex work wouldn't exist because no one would work. Everyone would have abundant access to resources and survive and thrive. Yeah, and you can support Cybertease. You can follow us at Instagram and Twitter at Cybertease_. And you can also go to our website, which is cybertease.co.uk. We've got resources, hot picks, events, all sorts. Yeah, and one thing that you could do is just pay a sex worker, like come and pay us, like subscribe to someone's OnlyFans, like, you know, go watch a cam show, like do what you can. Just, yeah, become a customer. We need you.
I think that my ideal world for sex workers sometimes comes out in the normal world or the world that we're currently living in. And it's generally just like an image of like a bunch of sex workers in a room and they're laughing and like in various stages of dress. So that's what my ideal world looks like. And yeah, one in which we can just like continue doing that and not have to worry about external context. And you can support our working community by, like Luna said, hiring for. Yeah, don't be so woke that you just, you know, be an ally, hire someone, you know what I mean? And then also, I also wanted to plug, you can follow Veil Machine King Out and Red Canary Song on social media, but I'm part of a giving circle called Black Trans Lives Thrive, and it is an amazing giving circle that donates monthly to a different like Black trans-led organization in the United States, and it like is automated, so you like it'll literally take the money out of your bank account and you won't even notice. So highly recommend. Yeah, you can find it at Great Garden.
Thank you, everyone. For those interested in following my work, you can check out my website at lenachen.com. And if you go to lenachen.com/donate, you'll get a link to SWAP Pittsburgh and some of the other organizations and projects that I'm involved in related to sex worker activism. I definitely encourage all of you to check out the organizations and work that our panelists are involved in. Go to their events, donate to their projects, and also do some research into the type of organizing that's happening on a local level where you are. Because sex workers are actually quite visible entities, despite many attempts to invisibilize and silence us. And the best way to make an impact is to look locally. And, money is important, but as we've already talked about during this panel, there's so many other forms of care that are also important during this pandemic. So give money, but also see what you can give in terms of time and other resources that people need. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of South by Southwest.